Single dad offered his boss shelter during the storm. What happened next will leave you speechless. Before we begin, let us know which city you're watching from in the comments. Are you really going to stay that late again? Diego's voice echoed in the nearly empty office of Solaris Construction as he filed the plans for the residential project into his briefcase. The forecast called for a major storm. Valentina Herrera looked up from her computer, her dark eyes reflecting the fatigue of another 12-hour workday. At 36, she had learned that being a project manager meant working twice as hard as any man in her position. The plans for the Torres del Sol complex must be ready early tomorrow, Diego. Not all of us have the luxury of leaving at 5 a.m. Diego, 38, felt the familiar sting of the comment. As a construction supervisor and single father, he had struggled for 10 years to balance his career with raising Emma. Every day was a race against time. It's not fancy, she replied, maintaining a professional tone. Emma has a conference at 7. I promise to be there. How convenient, Valentina murmured, returning to her screens. Some of us have responsibilities that don't wait for us. Excuse me? Diego approached his boss desk, noticing the dark circles under her eyes that makeup could no longer hide. We all have responsibilities, Valentina. The difference is that I don't sacrifice time with my daughter to impress the partners. The tension cut through the air like glass. They'd been working together for 3 years, and there was always this strange electricity between them. A mix of professional respect and something else no one dared to name. You know nothing about my sacrifices, she replied, standing up. While you play the perfect father, I keep this project afloat. The Torres del Sol complex costs 12 million pesos. A school function can wait. A school function can't wait for a 10-year-old girl who has already lost her mother. The words came out harsher than Diego intended. But of course, you wouldn't understand that. Valentina felt as if she had been slapped. For a moment, his professional mask cracked, revealing something vulnerable in his eyes. You have no right to. A deafening crash of thunder interrupted his reply, followed by the violent drumming of rain against the 23rd floor windows. The building's lights flickered. Perfect, Diego murmured, looking out the window. It's already started. Valentina remained silent, watching the raindrops crash against the glass. In the distance, lightning illuminated the city skyline with ghostly flashes. Is your daughter okay? She finally asked, her voice softer. She's with my neighbor, Mrs. Garcia. Emma knows that sometimes work gets complicated. Mine's with my mother, Valentina admitted. Mateo is 8 years old. He also understands that mom has to work late. It was the first time in 3 years that he mentioned his son at the office. Diego studied her with renewed curiosity. He had always thought of her as the ruthless executive, the woman who arrived first and left last, who never mentioned family or her personal life. I didn't know she had his son, he said softly. There are many things you don't know about me, Diego Ramirez. Another flash of lightning illuminated the office, immediately followed by a crash of thunder that rattled the windows. The rain was pouring down, pounding the building furiously. Should you go now? Diego suggested. This is only going to get worse. Valentina looked at her watch. It was 7:30 p.m. Emma's performance would have been over by now. For some reason, that made her feel guilty. Are you right? She admitted, starting to pack away documents. Mateo is waiting for me. As she gathered her things, she glanced at Diego out of the corner of her eye. She had seen him thousands of times in meetings, project reviews, client presentations, always professional, always prepared, always attractive, although she would never have allowed herself to think that out loud. How did she die? She asked suddenly, surprising herself. Emma's mother, I mean, if it's not too personal. Diego stopped dead in his tracks, his hand frozen on his briefcase. Who told you he died? I assumed. Valentina frowned. In 3 years, you never mentioned it. She didn't die. Diego's voice hardened. She left us when Emma was 4. She decided she wasn't ready for the responsibility. The silence that followed was louder than the storm outside. Valentina felt something move in her chest. A mixture of understanding and shared pain. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I shouldn't have assumed." "It doesn't matter. People always assume. It's easier than explaining that some mothers just leave." The lights flickered again, and this time they went dark for several seconds before coming back on. The building groaned in the wind. "We should definitely go," Diego said, heading for the elevator. Valentina followed him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. As they waited for the elevator, another flash of lightning illuminated their faces, revealing expressions neither of them had shown before. He, vulnerable after admitting his story. She, moved by the unexpected honesty. "Diego," said when the doors opened. "Thanks for telling me. About Emma, I mean." He nodded as they entered the elevator. "Maybe it's time you knew I'm not just the construction supervisor who's late to meetings because he has to pick up his daughter from school. And maybe it's time you knew I'm not just a mean boss who lives to make your life miserable." For the first time in 3 years, they exchanged a genuine smile. Outside, the storm raged as if the sky itself were about to shatter. Chapter 2. Unexpected Shelter. The elevator descended slowly as the storm shook the building. Valentina watched the digital numbers change. 20, 19, 18. On the 15th floor, the lights went completely dark and the elevator jerked to a stop. "It can't be," Valentina muttered in the darkness. "Calm down," Diego's voice sounded calm. "It's just a temporary outage. The emergency generators will be activated momentarily." As if predicting the future, a red emergency light came on, bathing the small space in an eerie glow. The elevator moved again, but slower. "Is this normal?" Valentina asked, noticing that her voice sounded more tense than she had intended. In storms like this, the building's electrical systems automatically protect themselves. They finally reached the underground parking garage. The emergency lights cast strange shadows between the concrete pillars. Valentina walked toward her black BMW, but when she pressed the remote, the car's lights flickered dimly without turning on. "Shit," she muttered, trying again. "Trouble? The battery's dead. Yesterday morning I had a hard time starting it, but I thought I'd get to the shop this weekend." Diego approached, assessing the situation. The rain pounded the garage roof like hammers, and water occasionally seeped through the expansion joints. "You have jumper cables." Cables that Diego couldn't help but smile at to connect your battery to another car's. "You've never had them." "I call the insurance company when my car breaks down," Valentina interrupted, crossing her arms. "That's why I pay for premium service, which will probably take 2 hours to arrive with this storm," Diego pointed out, pulling out his phone. "No coverage, by the way." Valentina checked hers, but there was no signal either. Great, a perfect ending to a perfect day. A flash of lightning lit up the parking lot through the vents, followed by a crack of thunder that echoed in the enclosed space. Then, as if someone had turned on a giant faucet, the sound of the rain intensified brutally. "It's getting worse," Diego observed. "The building where I live is 3 blocks away. You can stay in my car until it stops, or," he stopped, hesitating to make the offer, "or whatever. Or you can go upstairs to dry your clothes and wait there. I have coffee, and the Wi-Fi works with the building's emergency power supply." Valentina looked at him as if he'd suggested something outrageous. "To your apartment? Unless you'd rather spend the night in the parking lot." Diego pointed up, where the water was beginning to seep more noticeably. "Look, I know I'm your employee and this is unusual, but I'm also the father of a 10-year-old daughter and the neighbor of a 70-year-old woman who's known me my whole life. I'm not exactly a danger." Another thunderclap, this one louder, shook the parked cars. "Okay," Valentina finally said, "but only until the rain stops." During the 3-block walk, even running under Diego's umbrella, they both ended up soaked. The wind made the umbrella useless, and by the time they reached Diego's red brick building, Valentina's hair was plastered to her face and her shoes were full of water. Good heavens, she gasped in the lobby, kicking off her heels. I can't remember the last time I ran like that. Probably not in an office skirt, Diego commented, pressing the elevator button. Definitely not in an office skirt. She lived on the 5th floor, apartment 5B. When she opened the door, Valentina found herself in something completely unexpected, a home. It wasn't luxurious like Superhouse in Polanco, but it had something theirs didn't. Warmth, books stacked on tables, drawings of Emma taped to the refrigerator visible from the living room, a folded blanket on the couch, plants that someone was clearly caring for. Daddy, a child's voice came from the hallway. Emma, you were supposed to be with Mrs. Garcia. A 10-year-old girl showed up in unicorn pajamas, her brown hair in a messy ponytail. The power went out in her apartment, and she freaked out. He brought me here an hour ago. He's watching TV in your room. Emma stopped when she saw Valentina. Who is she? Emma, this is Mrs. Herrera, my boss at work. Her car broke down in the storm. Mrs. Serious? Emma asked with the brutal honesty of children. Emma. Valentina burst out laughing, her first in months. Mrs. Serious? Dad says her boss is very serious and always working, Emma explained without embarrassment. But you don't look so serious, you look like you've been swimming in clothes. Emma Ramirez. Diego's cheeks were red. Go check on Mrs. Garcia, please. Is she having dinner with us? Emma asked before leaving. I made peanut butter sandwiches. But Dad says he can cook something better if we have company. Valentina looked at Diego, who seemed to want to be swallowed up by the earth. I don't want to cause trouble. Isn't it trouble? Emma interrupted. We hardly ever have visitors. And Dad cooks delicious food when he's not tired from work. Emma, do you have any children? The girl continued, ignoring her father's desperate gestures. Yes, Valentina replied, surprised by how easily she got the answer. An 8-year-old boy. His name is Mateo. Is he home alone with the storm? The innocent question hit Valentina like a punch. Mateo was with his grandmother, but for the first time in years, she felt real guilt for not being with him on a night like this. He's with his grandmother, he explained. But you're right. He's probably scared. Children are always scared by storms, Emma agreed sagely. I used to be scared a lot. But Dad taught me that thunder is just noise and that we're safe inside. At that moment, as if the universe wanted to contradict the girl, the light went out completely. Chapter 3 New Dynamics. Darkness enveloped the apartment like a heavy blanket. For a few seconds, only the three of them could be heard breathing and the constant roar of the rain against the windows. Don't move. Diego's voice sounded calm in the darkness. I know every inch of this place. Her careful footsteps were heard. Then the sound of drawers being opened. Soon, the golden glow of a lantern cut through the darkness. Dad? Emma's voice sounded small. I'm here, love. I'll get the candles. Valentina stood motionless by the door, feeling cold drops slide down her back. Her soaked clothes clung uncomfortably to her skin, but she didn't dare move in unfamiliar territory. Mrs. Herrera, Emma's voice came closer. Are you okay? Yes, just a little disoriented. You can sit on the couch. It's right behind you. Valentina reached out until she found the back of an upholstered piece of furniture. It was soft and comfortable. She sat down carefully while Diego lit candles throughout the room. The building's emergency power system only covers the common areas, he explained. The apartments will be without power until the main service is restored. And when will that be? With storms like this, it can take hours. Emma appeared with a towel. For her hair, she offered it timidly. Dad says you get sick if you stay wet too long. Thank you, Emma. You're very thoughtful. The girl smiled, revealing a slightly crooked tooth, which gave her a charming look. I'm going to check on Mrs. Garcia, and then we can have dinner. Does she like peanut butter sandwiches? I haven't had one since I was your age. Are they really the best thing in the world? Well, after pizza. And the tacos, and the vanilla ice cream. Valentina found herself smiling genuinely as Emma skipped down the aisle. The girl's naturalness was refreshing. In her world of executive meetings and formal presentations, she had forgotten what conversation without an agenda felt like. Sorry, Diego said, placing more candles. Emma doesn't have much of a social filter. Don't apologize. She's lovely. Diego looked at her in surprise as he lit a candle near the sofa. In the golden light, Valentina looked different. Younger, less armored. Her wet hair framed her face softly, and there was something vulnerable in her eyes he had never seen in the office. Do you have dry clothes? She asked. Could you get sick in that soaked blouse? Valentina looked down. Her white blouse had become partially transparent, and her skirt was sticking uncomfortably to her legs. Don't want to be a nuisance? No, I'm not. I have sweatshirts and sweatpants. They won't be very stylish, but they'll be dry and warm. 5 minutes later, Valentina emerged from the bathroom wearing a gray sweatshirt that was too big for her and sweatpants that she had to constantly hold up to keep them from falling off. Her professional heels had been replaced with thick socks. I look ridiculous, she muttered. Do you look comfortable? Diego corrected. It's different. Emma ran back down the hallway. Mrs. Garcia says she's feeling better now and to leave us alone so we can meet your girlfriend. Emma? What? That's what she said. That you finally brought a beautiful woman home. Valentina felt heat rise up her neck. Diego seemed to want to disappear. Mrs. Garcia is 70 years old and watches soap operas all day. She explained quickly. Her sense of reality is altered. Huh? Valentina didn't know why she felt disappointed. Sure? Shall we make the anguishes? Emma interrupted. I'm hungry, and it's already 9 o'clock. For the next hour, something magical happened in the candlelit kitchen. Emma ran the operation like a seasoned chef, assigning tasks. Diego chopped vegetables for a makeshift salad. Valentina spread peanut butter with the seriousness of a surgeon. My mom never cooks, Emma commented as she sliced the bread. We always come home and order food or eat at my grandma's house. I work a lot, Valentina defended herself automatically. Why? The simple question caught her off guard. Why? Why is it important? Why do I have responsibilities? But don't you miss your son? Valentina put the knife down on the table. Emma looked at her with genuine, non-judgmental curiosity. Yes, she finally admitted. I miss him so much. So why doesn't he come home early? Why? Valentina paused. Why did she work so late? Was it really necessary, or had it become a way to avoid facing her empty life? It's complicated, Emma. Adults always say things are complicated, the girl observed. But Dad says if something's really important, you find a way to do it. Diego coughed, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Emma, we're not all in the same boat. That's fine, Valentina interrupted. She's right. Maybe she'd been using work as an excuse. They sat down to dinner at the small dining room table, the candles creating an intimate atmosphere neither of them had anticipated. Emma chatted about school, her friends, her plans for summer vacation. Valentina found herself fascinated by the normality of it all. What was he like when he was my age? Emma suddenly asked. Very different, Valentina replied, surprised by the question. Probably more serious. My parents expected a lot from me. Like what? Good grades, perfect behavior, plans for the future. There wasn't much time to be a child. That sounds sad, Emma said with brutal honesty. It kind of was. Diego watched the exchange with growing fascination. This woman sitting at her table, wearing her clothes, talking to her daughter, was completely different from the ruthless executive he knew. She was more real, more human. And her son, Matteo, Emma continued. He has to be perfect too. The question hit Valentina like a slap in the face. Was he repeating his parents' patterns? Matteo felt pressured by their expectations. I hope not, he murmured. I hope he can just be a boy. Boys need their parents to be there, Emma said wisely. Not all the time, but when it matters. And how do you know when it's important? Easy, Emma smiled. When they tell you it's important. At 10:30, Emma was yawning over her empty plate. Diego sent her off to brush her teeth, leaving the adults alone for the first time since they arrived. Your daughter is amazing, Valentina said, helping clear the dishes. She's too wise for her age. Sometimes I worry that she's had to grow up so fast. Because of her mother? Diego nodded, putting the dishes in the dishwasher. When Carla left us, Emma was 4 years old. Old enough to understand that mom was gone, but not enough to understand why. For months, he asked when she was coming back. And what did you tell him? The truth. That sometimes adults make decisions that hurt others, but that didn't mean it was her fault. That I would never leave her. Valentina felt something move in her chest. A mixture of admiration and something deeper. It must have been very difficult. The first few years were intense, but Emma is strong, often stronger than me. They sat in silence, washing dishes by candlelight. Outside, the storm was beginning to subside, although the rain remained steady. Can I ask you something? Valentina finally said. Of course. Why didn't you ever talk about this at work? I mean, we all assumed you were a widower, but you never corrected that story. Diego slowly dried a glass before answering, because it's easier for people to think him a victim of tragedy than a victim of choice. Death generates compassion. Abandonment raises uncomfortable questions about what you did wrong to make someone decide to leave. Did you ever find out? What did you do wrong? For years, I tortured myself with that question. Diego leaned against the sink. I worked too much. Was I not romantic enough? Did I not make enough money? But therapy helped me understand that sometimes people just aren't ready for what life throws at them. And that's not your fault. Valentina looked at him with new understanding. This man had faced the most fundamental rejection possible and had come out the other side a loving father, a respected professional, and a person of integrity. And you? Diego asked. What happened to Mateo's father? Ricardo. The name came out like a tired sigh. We got married right after graduation. He wanted the traditional wife. Smart sisters, a perfect house, well-behaved children. I wanted more. More how? A career. Financial independence. The feeling that my life had a purpose beyond making someone else happy. That doesn't sound irrational. To him, it did. Every promotion, every important project, every hour of overtime was a personal betrayal. He made me feel guilty for wanting to grow professionally. And Mateo? Mateo was complicated. Ricardo thought motherhood would calm me down. It would make me less ambitious. For the first few years, I tried to be what he wanted. But I was dying inside. Diego nodded, understanding more than she did. When did you decide to get a divorce? When Mateo was 5, Ricardo had started criticizing me in front of him, telling him that mom worked too hard because she didn't love them enough. That night I knew I had to choose between my marriage and my son's emotional health. It must have been very difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the most necessary. They looked at each other across the candlelit kitchen, two people who had navigated devastating emotional storms and found ways to move forward. Dad, Emma's sleepy voice came from the hallway. Can I go to bed now? I'm sleepy. Of course, love. Go to your room, you'll be there in a minute. As Emma's footsteps faded, Valentina realized something. The rain stopped. They both stood still, listening. He was right. The constant roar had ceased, replaced by the occasional dripping from the roof. "I guess I can go now," he said, but didn't move. "I guess so," Diego agreed, also not moving. They stood there, in the candlelit kitchen, feeling like something had irrevocably changed between them, but not knowing what to do about it. "Diego," she finally said, "thanks for the shelter, for the dinner, for letting me see this. But what? What does a happy family look like?" Before he could answer, she headed to the bathroom to change. When she emerged, in her damp but wearable clothes, Diego was waiting for her with the car keys. "I'll take you home. Your car can wait until tomorrow." During the silent drive through the wet, shiny streets, they both processed what had happened. It hadn't just been shelter from a storm. It had been the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but which they could no longer pretend didn't exist. After that fight, Chapter 4. Shadows of the Past. 3 weeks after the storm, the dynamic at Constructora Solaris had subtly changed. Valentina remained the demanding manager. Diego, the meticulous supervisor. But there was a new warmth in their professional exchanges. A shared smile as they reviewed plans. A good morning that lasted a second longer than necessary. Casual questions about Emma and Mateo wove into work conversations. "The foundations of Block C are ready for inspection," Diego reported, placing photographs of the site on Valentina's desk. "The concrete cured perfectly despite last week's humidity." "Excellent." Valentina studied the images with professional attention, but Diego noticed her fingers nervously playing with her pen. "Anything else?" "Mateo's birthday is on Saturday, right?" The question took her by surprise. Over the past few weeks, they'd exchanged details about their children. Emma was learning the piano. Mateo had started swimming lessons, small windows into their personal lives that they had previously kept tightly closed. 8 years. He confirmed, smiling genuinely. "Is it going to be a small party at my mom's house?" "Just family." Emma asked if Diego paused, hesitating. "It's crazy, forget it." "What did Emma ask?" "Mateo wanted to meet her. He says it's weird having a friend he doesn't know." Valentina felt something warm expand in her chest. In the 3 weeks since the storm, Emma had constantly appeared in their conversations. The girl had asked about Mateo, had sent greetings through Diego, had even drawn a get-well-soon card when Mateo had the flu. "It would be nice," she admitted. "Mateo doesn't have many friends either. He's a little shy. Do you want me to bring Emma over on Saturday, just for a little while, so they can get to know each other?" Before Valentina could answer, her assistant appeared in the doorway. "Excuse me, Mrs. Herrera. You have a visitor. He says it's urgent." "Who is it?" "Mr. Ricardo Vega. She says it's personal." The color drained from Valentina's face. Diego immediately noticed the change. His shoulders tensed, his hands balled into unconscious fists. "Tell him I'm in a meeting," he murmured. "I already told him that, but he insists. He says he'll wait as long as it takes." Diego watched the internal struggle reflected in Valentina's eyes. Whoever this Ricardo was, he clearly had the power to completely destabilize her. "Do you want me to stay?" he offered discreetly. "No. This is personal. You may leave." But Diego didn't move when Ricardo Vega entered the office. He was a 40-year-old man. Perfectly combed hair. Expensive suit. The practiced smile of a successful salesman. His eyes scanned the office approvingly before settling on Valentina. "Valentina, do you look well? Success suits you. What do you want, Ricardo? Can't I visit the mother of my child without a hidden agenda?" Diego picked up on the subtle possessiveness in the tone, the way Ricardo took over the space, uninvited. He decided to stay. "I'm Diego Ramirez, construction supervisor for the Torres del Sol project." He introduced himself by extending his hand. Ricardo shook it with unnecessary firmness. Ricardo Vega, real estate development consultant and Mateo's father, of course. The silence that followed was tense. Valentina stared out the window, avoiding eye contact with her ex-husband. "Diego, could you give us some privacy?" she finally asked. "Of course. It'll be in my office if you need anything." When Diego left, Ricardo closed the door and sat down uninvited. Impressive office, incredible view. Clearly, the divorce motivated you to excel. Get to the point, Ricardo. I've been thinking a lot lately. About us, about Mateo, about the mistakes we made, the mistakes you made. We both made mistakes, he gently corrected. Me for not supporting your ambitions, you for prioritizing work over family. Valentina finally looked at him, her eyes blazing. Aren't you going to do this? Aren't you going to walk in here after 2 years and rewrite history? I'm not rewriting anything. I'm acknowledging that we both acted wrongly, but I'm also acknowledging something more important, that we still love each other. Are you crazy? Am I? Ricardo leaned forward. Mateo needs a father present. You don't visit on weekends. You need a partner who understands your ambitions, not one who sabotages them. I've changed, Valentina. My business is thriving. Can I be the partner you deserve? A partner? In everything. In life, in business. Imagine it. Vega Herrera de Arroyos, combining my investment experience with your talent for project management. We could build an empire. Valentina stood up and walked toward the window. And what about Mateo in this plan, Maestro? Mateo would have what every child deserves. A complete family. Stability. A father who sees him more than 6 hours a week. The blow was calculated and effective. Valentina felt the familiar guilt tighten in her throat. Mateo is fine. Are you okay? He called me crying last night because it was stormy and you were working. Your mother had to comfort him for 2 hours. Isn't that it? Isn't that what? Isn't that true? Valentina, you are repeating exactly the same patterns you criticized your parents for. Obsessive work, emotional absence, impossible expectations. Every word was a precise stab. Ricardo knew exactly where to press to make her feel inadequate. A skilled head perfected over 6 years of marriage. I've been watching you these past few months. He continued. Coming home late, missing school functions, sending your mother to parent-teacher conferences. Is this what you wanted when you filed for divorce? To be exactly like your father? Enough. I won't stop because the truth hurts. Mateo needs stability, and you need someone who can give you what you really want, a family and a successful career. With me, you can have both. And what do you want in return? A second chance. For us, for Mateo. To build something real together. Ricardo leaned closer, his voice becoming softer, more persuasive. I know I've made terrible mistakes. I know I hurt you. But I've had 2 years to reflect, to grow. And I've discovered something, that success without family is empty. Look at this office. Look at everything you've accomplished. It's impressive. But you come home and share these triumphs with someone, or you simply work late to avoid an empty house. Valentina closed her eyes. It was as if Ricardo had been spying on her life, documenting every moment of solitude. Every night, he stayed at the office to avoid facing his quiet apartment. Think about it, Ricardo said, heading for the door. You don't have to decide now, but Mateo turns 8 tomorrow and deserves to see his parents together at least for that day. Let me escort you to the party. Let me show you I can be the man you need. When he left, Valentina slumped in her chair. Ricardo's words reverberated in her mind like echoes of her own insecurities. Was she really a better mother than when she was married? Or had she simply traded one cage for another? A soft knock on the door brought her out of her thoughts. May I come in? Diego peeked his head cautiously. Yes, please. Are you okay? You look devastated, she added with a bitter smile. I feel devastated. Diego closed the door and sat down across from her. Do you want to talk about it? For the next 20 minutes, Valentina told him everything. The manipulative marriage, the painful divorce, the constant doubts about her motherhood, and finally, Ricardo's proposal. Who are you considering? Diego asked when she finished. I don't know. Maybe he's right. Maybe Mateo does need a complete family. Mateo needs a mother who loves him. And he already has that. But is it enough? Is it enough that I love him if I'm not there when he needs me? Diego leaned forward. Can I tell you something? When Emma was 6, I lost an important project because I ran out of work when she fell in the park and broke her arm. My boss told me I had to choose between being a parent or a professional, that I couldn't effectively do both. What did you do? I looked for another job. Because I realized that any place that asked me to choose between my daughter and my career wasn't where I wanted to be. Is it different for men? Is it different because we make it different? He interrupted gently. Valentina, in 3 weeks I've seen how you light up when you talk about Mateo. I've seen the photos on your phone, the drawings you keep on your desktop. You're an incredible mother, who's also an incredible professional. That's nothing to apologize for. But Ricardo is right about some things. I work too hard. He's late. I miss important moments. So change that. But don't go back to someone who spent 6 years making you feel inadequate, just because they now say they've changed. Valentina looked at him, her eyes filled with unshed tears. How can you be so sure? Because I know that kind of man. Because I've lived with that kind of pressure. Emma's mom didn't leave me because I was inadequate as a parent or partner. She left me because she wanted a different life, and instead of being honest about it, she spent months making me feel like it was all my fault. And how did you get over that? I stopped seeking validation from someone who had decided I'd never be enough, no matter what I did. They fell silent. The weight of the conversation settled between them. Diego finally said, Is Emma's invitation to the party still open? Of course. I think I'd like Mateo to meet a family that's working well, so he can see that there are other options besides what Ricardo is offering. Are you sure? I don't want to complicate things. They're already complicated, she admitted with a sad smile. But maybe it's time they were complicated the right way. When Diego left, Valentina stared out the window at the city she had conquered professionally, but which sometimes felt like a gilded prison. Tomorrow would be Mateo's birthday. And she would have to face decisions that could change the course of her life. The question was, would she have the courage to choose the difficult but honest path? Or would she take the easy route back to a familiar cage? For the first time in years, she wasn't sure of the answer. Chapter 5. Crisis and Confrontation. Saturday arrived with clear skies and Valentina's anxiety at its peak. She had spent the previous night rearranging her apartment 3 times, changing her clothes 4 times, and practicing in the mirror how to introduce Diego and Emma without it sounding like a declaration of romantic intent. At 2 p.m, the doorbell rang. Valentina opened the door to find Diego wearing a light blue shirt that highlighted his eyes, and Emma wearing a yellow dress, carrying a gift wrapped in superhero paper. Mrs. Herrera, Emma practically bounced off her feet. Has Mateo arrived yet? I'm really looking forward to meeting him. He's in the garden with his grandmother. Valentina smiled, noticing Diego discreetly assessing her apartment. Please come in. Valentina's penthouse was the exact opposite of Diego's apartment. Spacious, modern, immaculate. All white and glass with abstract art on the walls and not a single object out of place. Wow! Emma murmured, turning to look at the high ceiling. It's like living in a magazine. Emma! Diego scolded her gently. No, it's okay. Valentina laughed. You're right. It's a bit sterile. They went out to the garden where Mateo's grandmother, Esperanza Herrera, a 65-year-old woman with perfectly coiffed silver hair, was supervising an 8-year-old boy who was trying to blow up balloons without much success. "Mateo, come meet the guests." The boy approached timidly. He was thin, with large, expressive eyes like his mother's and a cautious smile that suggested he wasn't used to receiving much attention. "Hello," he murmured, looking at his shoes. "Hi." Emma had no such inhibitions. "I'm Emma, and this is my dad, Diego. I brought you a super cool gift." Mateo looked up, intrigued despite his shyness. "Really?" "Yes. It's a robot building kit. Dad says you're very smart and like science." "I love robots," Mateo admitted, his smile becoming more genuine. "Do you want to open it now? We can build one together." As the children settled down on the grass with their gifts, Grandma Esperanza approached Diego. "So you're Valentina's famous boss," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Or is Valentina your boss? I always get confused by these modern dynamics." "Valentina is my project manager," Diego responded politely. "I work under her supervision." "Oh, how interesting. And is it common for employees to attend family parties?" "Mom," Valentina chimed in, a warning in her voice. "I'm just asking, dear. Is this the first time you've brought someone from work to a family gathering?" Diego felt the attention immediately. This woman was sizing him up, probably finding him unsuitable for some reason he couldn't quite put his finger on. "Emma wanted to meet Mateo," she explained simply. "The children have been asking about each other." "Look, Mom." Mateo ran toward them with a small robot in his hands. "Emma helped me build it and knows about circuits and everything. My dad taught me," Emma explained proudly. "We build things together all the time." "How lovely," Hope said. But her tone suggested otherwise. "And where's your mom, Emma?" The girl's face darkened slightly. "My mother left us when I was little." An awkward silence fell over the group. Esperanza looked at Diego with renewed appraisal, but this time there was something resembling understanding in her eyes. "Go play while the adults talk," Valentina suggested, sending the children back to the garden. "Coffee?" she offered, leading Diego toward the terrace, while his mother discreetly disappeared into the kitchen. "Your mother doesn't seem very impressed with me," Diego observed, accepting the rate Valentina offered him. "My mother isn't easily impressed by anyone who doesn't have a graduate degree and an 8-figure investment portfolio." "Ah, then I'm definitely in trouble." Valentina laughed, but there was tension in her expression. "Diego, there's something I need to tell you. Ricardo is coming." "Here? Today?" She insisted that it was important to Mateo that both parents be present for his birthday, and, technically, she's right. Diego placed his cup on the glass table, processing the information. "How does Mateo feel about this?" "Confused. He's been asking why Dad wants to come over suddenly when he normally only sees him every other weekend." "And how are you feeling?" Before Valentina could answer, the doorbell rang again. Through the window, they could see an elegant man at the door, carrying an elaborately wrapped gift that looked too big for an 8-year-old boy. "There it is," Valentina murmured, going to open it. Ricardo walked in as if he owned the place, kissing Valentina's cheek with possessive familiarity and sizing Diego up with calculating eyes. Ricardo Vega introduced himself, extending his hand. "Mateo's father, Diego Ramirez. I work with Valentina." "Oh, yes," the employee. "Valentina told me they had developed a friendship." The word employee was spoken with enough condescension that Diego immediately understood the dynamic Ricardo was establishing. Mateo, Papa, ran toward Ricardo, who lifted him up in a theatrical hug. "My champion, 8 years old, practically a man, I have something very special for you." The gift turned out to be a professional mountain bike, clearly too advanced and expensive for an 8-year-old. It's amazing," Mateo murmured, but his enthusiasm seemed forced. "Right?" It costs more than most people's monthly salary, but my son deserves the best. Diego felt the indirect blow, but kept his expression neutral. Emma, however, didn't pick up on the subtleties. "What a cool bike!" he exclaimed genuinely. "Dad, can we get one like that?" "Maybe for your birthday, love," Diego replied, perfectly aware that he couldn't afford something like that. "Of course, it's understandable." Ricardo chimed in with false sympathy. "Not all of us can afford such luxuries. Mid-level jobs have their limitations." Valentina visibly tensed. "Ricardo, what?" "I'm just being realistic. There's nothing wrong with living together within our means." For the next hour, Ricardo carried out a systematic campaign of subtle humiliation. He commented on Diego's modest clothing. He suggested that Emma was probably unaccustomed to this standard of living and constantly referred to his own superior financial situation. The breaking point came when the adults were sitting on the terrace while the children played in the garden. "Valentina told me about the challenges at work," Ricardo said casually. "It must be difficult to maintain professional objectivity when you develop personal relationships with subordinates." "There's no challenge," Valentina replied tensely. "Of course there are challenges. It's natural. A single woman working long hours is understandable if she seeks companionship. But mixing the personal with the professional never ends well." Diego felt something explode in his chest. Is she implying that Valentina can't maintain her professionalism? "I'm simply observing that women in positions of power often make emotional decisions that can compromise their judgment." "Ricardo, stop it," Valentina chimed in, but her voice sounded more tired than angry. "Just an observation, my dear. For example, yesterday I spoke with Mr. Mendoza from the board of directors. He told me that they've noticed certain inconsistencies in your management recently: missed meetings, questionable decisions, a lack of focus." "That's not true." Diego stood up, unable to contain himself any longer. "Valentina is the most competent project manager I've ever met. The Torres del Sol project is ahead of schedule and under budget thanks to your leadership. And you're very objective in evaluating your boss, of course." Ricardo smiled maliciously, especially considering he clearly has personal expectations. "Diego, no," Valentina murmured, but he had already crossed the line. "My expectations are that Valentina be treated with the respect she deserves, not manipulated into feeling inadequate when she's clearly exceptional at everything she does." "Manipulate?" Ricardo stood up too. "I'm just offering stability. A real family for my son, not emotional turmoil disguised as friendship. A real family isn't based on making one parent feel inferior." "And what can you offer?" "A middle-class apartment, financial uncertainty, a future limited by an employee's salary." "Ricardo, that's enough." Valentina finally exploded. "I won't allow you to insult Diego in my house." "Your house?" Ricardo smiled triumphantly. "Valentina, this house is financed with the money I earned during our marriage. Technically, it's still both mine and yours." The silence that followed was deafening. Diego felt as if he had been slapped in the face, not by the financial implications, but by the realization that Valentina was living surrounded by reminders of their failed marriage. "I think it's time for me to go," Diego finally said. "No," Valentina stood up as well. "You don't have to go." "Yes, I have to." "Emma, pack your things. We're leaving." "But why?" Emma came running. "Mateo and I were playing, and we're just about to cut the cake. You've played enough for today, love." "But it's not fair." Emma looked between the adults, finally sensing the tension. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, dear," Valentina chimed in gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. We adults sometimes make things complicated." "Is he coming to my birthday party next month?" Emma asked, her eyes hopeful. Valentina looked at Diego, whose jaw was tense and his eyes cold. "That depends on a lot of things, Emma." "It doesn't depend on anything," Ricardo interrupted. "Valentina is going to be very busy with important changes in her life. Isn't that right, dear?" Diego understood the implication immediately. He looked at Valentina, hoping she would contradict him, hoping she would say Ricardo was wrong. But Valentina remained silent, averting her gaze. "I understand," Diego finally said. "Emma, God bless you." As they headed for the door, Emma turned to Mateo. "I hope to see you soon," he said with childlike sincerity. "Me too," Mateo replied sadly. "I had a lot of fun with you." In the car on the way home, Emma finally broke the silence. "Dad, why was Mateo's dad so mean to you?" Diego sighed, searching for the right words. "Sometimes adults have complicated problems and don't always handle them in the best way. But Senora Valentina is your friend, right?" "That's what I thought, love. That's what I thought." That night, while Emma slept, Diego sat on his small balcony, looking at the city lights, wondering if he'd been a fool to think someone like Valentina could actually be interested in someone like him. In her penthouse, Valentina was asking the exact same question, but from the other side, whether she had been a fool to think she could be brave enough to choose love over safety. The answer, for both of them, felt painfully clear. Senatsu Chapter 6 New construction. 2 weeks after Mateo's birthday, the Solaris construction office had become an emotional minefield. Diego and Valentina maintained a cold, professional courtesy that fooled everyone except themselves. The good mornings were curt, the meetings strictly technical, and any previous warmth had been carefully eradicated. The final plans for the Torres del Sol complex are ready for presentation. Diego informed her, placing a folder on Valentina's desk without making eye contact. "The client arrives at 10. "Perfect. Any technical issues you should be aware of?" "None. Everything is within specifications." Valentina nodded, pretending to read documents to avoid looking at him. For the past 2 weeks, Mateo's party had replayed in her mind like a movie on repeat. Diego's face when Ricardo humiliated him. The way Emma had innocently asked about seeing each other again. Valentina's complicit silence when she should have defended Diego more clearly. "Diego," she finally said, as he headed for the door, "we can talk after the presentation, I mean." He stopped without turning around. "If it's necessary for work, of course, it's not about work. So I don't see the point. I think we both know where we stand." When he left, Valentina slumped in her chair. Ricardo had been constantly pressuring her for the past 2 weeks, showing up at her office with business proposals, sending flowers to her apartment, taking Mateo out to expensive dinners, and bringing him back full of stories about when Mom and Dad were together. Her phone vibrated with a message from Ricardo. "I have some exciting news about our joint project this lunch." Valentina was about to reply when her assistant poked her head in. "The client is here, Ms. Herrera. Ready for the presentation?" The presentation of the Torres del Sol complex was a resounding success. The client, Mr. Mendoza, and his team of investors were impressed by the attention to detail, the innovation in sustainable design, and the ambitious yet realistic timeline. "Exceptional work, Mrs. Herrera," Mr. Mendoza concluded. "This project sets a new standard for residential developments in the city." "The credit isn't just mine," Valentina responded, surprising Diego. "My construction supervisor, Diego Ramirez, was instrumental in solving the most complex technical challenges. Without his expertise, this project would not have been possible." Diego looked at her in surprise. "I hadn't expected him to publicly acknowledge it, especially after the attention he's received in recent weeks." "Mr. Ramirez is clearly a valuable asset to his team," Mendoza observed. "How had he left alone? What was he thinking? What would happen if something happened to him?" When she arrived at the cafeteria, panting, she saw him. Lucas was at one of the tables, with his stuffed dinosaur on his lap, eating a piece of cake that one of the waitresses, an old acquaintance of Julieta's, had given him. "Lucas!" she screamed, running toward him. The boy stood up and hugged her tightly. "I didn't want to cause you any trouble," he whispered. "Just wanted to know where you came from. I missed everything about you." Julieta crouched down, trembling. "You gave me the biggest scare of my life. You can't just disappear like that, okay?" Not again. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. Alone, Mom says they'll be leaving with her soon. And I don't want to. I want to stay with you. Julieta hugged him tighter. You're not going anywhere. Not anymore. Just then, Adrian burst in like a flash. Seeing Lucas, he let out a breath he had been holding and knelt down beside them. Lucas, are you okay? The boy nodded, still holding Juliet. Adrian looked at them both, and for the first time, his eyes shone with a mixture of fear, anger, and something else, something vulnerable. Don't do that again, he told his son. I was scared to death. Lucas looked at her guiltily. He didn't want her to leave. Who said she's leaving? He asked Adrian, looking at Julieta. Nobody's leaving. Not now. She remained silent. She felt exhausted, emotionally drained, but the fact that the three of them were there, in that small, shabby cafe, gave her a strange certainty. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was chaotic, full of mistakes, full of doubts. But it was her story. And it wasn't over yet. That night, the Greenwich estate was quieter than ever. Lucas was fast asleep, exhausted from everything he had been through. Julieta had tucked him in carefully, stroking his hair until his breathing became regular and calm. When she went downstairs, Adrian was waiting for her in the living room with 2 cups of tea on the coffee table. She sat down beside him without saying anything. She just held the cup in her hands and let the warmth slowly relax her. Thank you, said the bass drummer. For finding him. For calming him down. For not letting go of him for even a second. You don't have to thank me for anything. I wouldn't have left him alone, not in 1,000 lifetimes. I know that. That's why I need you close. Julieta turned her head and looked at him. Adrian was watching her with a different kind of sincerity. He was no longer the cold businessman, the imposing host of a gala. He was a broken man, rebuilt, who had found something he didn't know he needed. Julieta, he said, his voice even lower. This all started unexpectedly. I wasn't looking for you. But since you appeared, my life and Lucas have changed completely. You've brought calm, affection, truth, things I didn't know I was missing. She felt a lump in her throat. I wasn't looking for anything either. I just wanted to help my sister survive. And you did. But you also did something else. You gave us a family. Me. To my son. And if you think you can, I want to give you yours too. Julieta looked at him, confused. What are you saying? Adrian stood up, reached into his jacket pocket, and pulled out a small black box. He opened it slowly. A simple ring, with a subtle yet meaningful shine, lay inside. I'm not asking you for an answer now, he said. I just want you to know that I'm here. That I'm willing to build this with you. This isn't a debt. It's not a favor. It's love. Julieta didn't know what to say. Tears filled her eyes without her asking. She covered her mouth with her hand, as if she could contain all the pent-up emotion. Me. You don't need to decide anything tonight, he repeated. Just tell me if you feel the same way. She felt slowly. Yes. I'm sorry. I don't know how it happened, but yes, I'm sorry. Adrian bridled and hugged her. A hug without rushing, without pressure, just with the calm of someone who'd finally found a safe place. And for the first time, she allowed herself to cry without hiding. A month later, in a small community center in Bottle, the same one where Julieta had taught classes to neighborhood children, a wedding unlike any other was celebrated. There were no frills, no gilded tables, no red carpets. The walls were decorated with garlands made by local children. The chairs were plastic, and the tables were covered with checkered tablecloths. But there was love. Much love. Marta, radiant after the successful transplant. Discreetly arranged by a foundation Adrian contacted, she witnessed the wedding. She was wearing a green dress Julieta had made for her and couldn't stop smiling. Daniela, the friend who had started it all with that forgotten invitation, came from Scotland to be there. She helped coordinate everything with tireless energy. The neighbors, the cafe's former customers, the children who had once learned to add thanks to Julieta, everyone was there. Lucas, in his gray suit and twisted bow tie, carried the rings with solemnity. Before reaching the altar, though, he tripped and burst out laughing, making everyone laugh. "It's official," he said aloud. "We're a team forever." Julieta walked down the aisle in a cream dress she sewed herself. It wasn't perfect. It had crooked stitches and a stubborn seam in the back. But it was hers. Like her life. Imperfect, honest, and patiently hand-woven. Adrian waited for her with a look that spoke volumes. He wasn't a billionaire CEO anymore. He was just a man in love. "I promise to take care of you," Juliet said. "And to remind you every day that he's not alone." "I promise to respect you," Adrian said. "And to continue learning with you what it means to have a family." The applause was immediate. The "I do" was simple, yet so genuine that it felt like a collective sigh. Afterward, everyone moved to the center's backyard, where tables were laden with homemade food, rice with vegetables, empanadas, fruit tarts, and lemonade. Lucas ran from table to table, telling everyone that he now had a mom and a dad, although one got a little confused in the park. Julieta hugged him several times. She looked at him as if she still couldn't believe it was all real. Adrian raised a glass of lemonade and addressed everyone. "Thank you for being here." This story began with a misunderstanding and a cold night in a hotel lobby. But today is the most beautiful truth I've ever experienced. That night, when everyone had left and the sun was already setting behind the thatched roofs, Julieta sat with Adrian and Lucas on a bench in the communal garden. Lucas slept, lying on her lap, clinging to his dinosaur. "You see?" Adrian said. "We didn't need ball gowns or luxurious rooms. We just needed the right people. And a little courage," she added. "And a well-told lie," he laughed. "Which ended up being the most beautiful truth," Juliet whispered. And so, under the peaceful sky of her old neighborhood, amid simple lights and new promises, Julieta realized she wasn't a guest in that life. She was the owner of her own story. If you've made it this far, thank you for joining us in this story. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments how you rate this story from 0 to 10. See you in the next story.